What do we know about the length of time or the amount of friction it takes to create a habit and the difficulty in breaking it?
Yeah.
So maybe that doesn't make sense. I'll try to come up with an example. If it takes a long time to really create a habit around exercise or meditation, let's pick something new.
Okay.
So, not an easy thing to do, right?
Right.
But let's say over years and years and years, you take a lot of time to build that memory, that muscle memory up. I assume that's creating some sort of physiologic headroom that makes it much harder for you to erode that down?
Yes, absolutely. So what's happening when you're meditating is that, as we mentioned, there's these neural synapses, neural pathways that connect the synapses associated with the cue and the routine and the reward. They're becoming thicker and thicker and thicker over time. What's interesting is they almost never become significantly thinner. So if you develop a meditation habit and then you stop meditating, your life changes, the cues. When you come back to meditation, you will fall back into it much more quickly than the average person. So we know that creating habits, both good and bad, creates this neural pathway that we need to be conscious of. But to your question of how long does it take? The answer is we actually don't know. There's this myth, this old wives' tale that, it takes 21 days to build a habit and it takes 30 days to break a habit. What the research tells us is that there is no number, because different people have different thresholds and different kinds of habits have different timelines associated with them. If you want to create a habit of eating chocolate, you can probably do it in a couple of days, right? It's an immediate positive response. If you like chocolate, it's something you enjoy. The cues are plentiful around you. You just put chocolate bars in your house. But if you want to build an exercise habit, it's going to take a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But here's the important thing, is that regardless of how long it takes to build that habit or change a habit, every day you do it, it will get a little bit easier. And you might not feel that increase in ease the first couple of days, right? But what's going to happen is I'm going to push myself to exercise day 1, day 2, day 3. I'm going to relapse on day 4. I'm going to not do it. But instead of beating up on myself, I'm going to look for the science to what went wrong here? What's my plan for next time? And then I get to day 12, or I get to day 20, or I get to day 365. And it occurs to me, actually, exercising is really easy for me now. I hardly even think about it. It just happens almost kind of automatically.
Now, what about the negatives?
Right.
So if you take two individuals, one who has been smoking for a year, a pack a day for a year, and one who has been smoking a pack a day for 20 years, is it necessarily the case that the latter is going to have a much more difficult time quitting?
Probably, because it's a much more ingrained behavior. But this is where individual differences come into play significantly. Because if that first person, if they're an athlete, if they've worked on other habits in their life, if they've strengthened that muscle around habit change, they might be able to rely on that to give up smoking. Whereas the 20-year smoker doesn't. But yes, in general, the longer and more consistent a behavior becomes, the more reinforced it becomes in our brain.
And does that mean that, let's just assume both of these individuals are able to quit smoking?
Yeah.
It's 5 years later, both of them are at a bar and they both light up a cigarette. Are they both equally susceptible to relapse, or is the 20-year person more susceptible because his neural connections are more hardwired?
Well, there's a lot of compounding factors there, right? So when the 20-year-old smoker lights up his cigarette, we're focusing on the habit loop associated with nicotine use. But there's probably other habit loops that he has developed over time, which is he might feel much more intense sense of shame over smoking than the 1-year smoker. He might have emphysema or developing health problems. And those are creating mental habits for him that are countervailing the positive reinforcement of the nicotine. So the answer to your question is it's really hard to say universally. What we do know is that the more consistent a reward, whether it's a reward that rewards a positive behavior or a negative behavior, the more consistent that reward and the more consistent that cue, the faster the habit will take hold and the stronger the grip it'll have on us. But when we're trying to change it or create a new habit, there's so many other variables that we can't predict how long it's going to take, but we do know that any habit can be changed.
Is there a rule of thumb that says on average it is more or less difficult to break habits than to create habits?
Not well. So the science doesn't sort of address that question. What we do know is that it takes a different technique to build a new habit than to change an old habit, right? So if I want to build a new habit, if I want to start running, what I need to do is I need to sit down, just come up with a cue, come up with a reward. Okay, my cue is, and by the way, all cues fall into one of 5 categories. It's a time of day, a particular place or environment. It's a certain emotion you feel. It's the presence of certain other people, or it's a preceding behavior that's become ritualized. So tomorrow I want to start running. I've never run before. I'm going to take advantage of as many of those as I can, right? So my plan is set my alarm for 7 o'clock. I want to be at the door by 7:30 running. And I'm going to put my running shoes and my running clothes on my floor next to my bed so I see them when I wake up. It's super easy to put them on. I know what I'm going to wear. I'm going to ask my friend Jim to meet me on the corner. We're going to run together. I'm creating as many cues as I can.
If you can tap into all 5, you're in the money.
Some of them are going to stick.
Yep.
And then when I get home, I've already decided what reward I'm going to give myself. I'm going to have a nice long shower. I'm going to drink a smoothie. I'm going to take 15 minutes to check social media or whatever else sort of delights me. So that's how we build a new habit, is we choose a cue and we choose a reward and we link it to a behavior we want to encourage. But for a bad habit, a habit that we want to extinguish, our nomenclature is incorrect. We often talk about breaking a bad habit. But because that neural pathway exists in our brain, I've smoked for 20 years, I can't just extinguish those neural connections. What I need to do is, instead of thinking about breaking a bad habit or extinguishing it, I have to think about changing that habit. And in that case, what I do is I identify the cue that prompts this behavior I want to change. I identify the reward that behavior is giving me. And I'm going to simply insert a new behavior that corresponds to that old cue, that delivers something similar to that old reward. And I'm going to let my brain eventually shift, keep the habit loop inside my head, but change the behavior, the routine.
Yeah. I'm Peter Attia. This podcast relies exclusively on premium subscribers for support, which allows us to provide all our content without taking a single penny from advertisers. I believe this keeps my content honest, making it a trusted resource for listeners like you. As a premium member, you'll get immediate access to our entire back catalog of AMA episodes and all future AMA episodes. You'll get longevity-focused premium articles packed with actionable insights. You'll get unrivaled show notes for each and every episode of The Drive, every topic, every study, every resource from each episode carefully curated for you. You'll get quarterly podcast summaries where you'll learn my biggest personal takeaways from the previous 90 days of expert guest episodes and much more. This journey doesn't have to be navigated alone. We can take these steps towards a better, longer life together. Become a premium member today at peterattiamd.com/subscribe to join me in a shared commitment to a healthier future.